unique education issues in the hopper right now.
The Dan York State of Mind program is brought to you in part by Lookout Rhode Island and Takeo Comfort Solutions.
My education guru, Erika Sanzi, is here, and I love Fridays because they're freewheeling conversations. There's been a lot of stuff going on. This lunch shaming thing is perhaps one of the silliest and misunderstood issues that we've had in a long time. The city of Warwick came into a firestorm, and when things go national and they go factually wrong, it can just get nutty. But we've got evergreen legislation that has been passed. The governor's still taking heat for that, no doubt. It pertains to education in a big way. Holding the bottom line and being able to negotiate are very important matters. There's still a pending conversation about what a custodial relationship ought to not allow when it comes to teachers and other people in custodial authority for young ones. And Erika's been blogging with her blog, Good School Hunting, on this on many of these issues for weeks and weeks and weeks. So we'll get into that tonight. As I usually tell the Friday night audience, we record the Friday show on Thursday night or Thursday afternoon, as the case may be. So I generally don't make comment on Friday matters because they're obsolete and I'm not here. We catch up on Monday. But I do want to catch up on something that I attempted to speak about last night and didn't quite get through it because of some timing issues. But as I speak on Thursday afternoon, and as you watched this yesterday, lost a good friend, a gym buddy. Dr. Frank Dettori passed away at the age of 80 years old. He was a chief surgeon at Landmark Hospital for so many years, a real pillar in the community, no doubt. Leaves his wife Maggie of 54 years, 5 kids, 12 grandkids. But I mentioned him, and I love that big smile on his face because I would see that smile on his face whenever he saw Donald Trump on the screen. He was no doubt a conservative of great proportion. Come on back to me because I want to tell you the story. So I would inevitably find myself in a political debate, not something that I enjoy, by the way, outside the auspice of the television and the radio show, because I try to walk kind of softly. But Frank would engage anybody in the gym, and he would have his remote, and he would have his Fox News on, and you dare not touch the remote. In fact, the remote was introduced as part of the funeral yesterday, just as part of the remembrance of him. Kind of a laugh for everybody. He would see me coming, and I'd be, hat over face, and Dan, do you see this latest Trump thing? And I would say, yeah, Frank, because this would be daily, because when is there a day that goes by when there isn't a latest Trump thing? And he learned over time that I'm no fan of the president. I think you probably have learned that as well if you watch or listen to my radio show. So inevitably, we would get into a mild discourse. And oftentimes he would just throw his hands up and that would be it. And the next time it would repeat itself. Well, ironically, last week, while I'm on the machine and he's at a bench, he's looking at the screen and they're getting after Trump in some way. And he turns to me and he says, I don't understand. The country's in great shape, and why can't they just leave this guy alone? I decided to let it go. I left it alone. And I said, Frank, I don't know. Last conversation I ever had with him. So it's ironic and poetic that when we would do this in our last conversation, I left it alone, just like he wanted. Donald Trump should know, perhaps his biggest fan I've ever met has gone to a better place. And the world is a lesser place for having lost him. We're going to miss him. Godspeed to Dr. Frank Dettori, his family. Condolences. In the meantime, let's get to the issues of the day. Here are some ridiculous headlines that just got worse and worse and worse for the city of Warwick. lunch shaming, then they end the policy. We can just rip through them. You can follow this whole thing. We're going to play this story, and I think it probably will put most of it in perspective, if that's possible.
Amendment fails. Yeah.
Warwick Public Schools is taking a step back from their recent controversial lunch policy. Earlier this week, the district said if a student owes money on their lunch account, they will be served a sun butter and jelly sandwich. At a policy subcommittee meeting Wednesday night, Chairwoman Karen Bacchus said it's time to take another look.
The policy subcommittee is recommending that Warwick School Committee allow the students their choice of lunch regardless of their account status.
With the sun butter policy, Bacchus says the lunch that was originally picked would have been thrown away.
So we don't want to embarrass, we don't want to shame, we also don't want to waste.
So for now, as the full committee reviews the lunch policy, students won't be limited to a cold sandwich.
We seek to find a balance between being fiscally responsible and ensuring that all of our students are provided with a healthy, nutritious lunch.
Angelica Penta, the owner of Jell's Kitchen, made national headlines after offering $4,000 worth of donations to Warwick schools, only to be told no thanks. She was at the meeting and was happy to hear the committee say they are now looking into accepting the money.
Nobody wants to see kids get shamed or be denied a meal.
Penta says her efforts have received so much attention, she's been getting calls from all over. She's confident she could even reach the district's outstanding balance of $77,000 by next Monday.
We are so thankful for everyone that is donated. Without everybody donating, we would not be able to do this and fight for these kids and make sure that everybody is able to get a meal.
This might be one of the hottest, dumbest stories I've seen in a long time, don't you think?
It was definitely up there in terms of social media outrage, stupidity. Yes.
Yeah.
I'd rank it pretty high.
And you like to play in that social media thing. You like to, but you disseminate your important blog via social media, and then you get tangled up with people in social media. You enjoying that, by the way?
So I don't tangle as much as I used to, for sure. I have to be on for my job, and I do also find there's a lot of funny things on there that I like, but to your point, it's not always the best. It's not always the best use of time.
Well, the social media is in part a great tool, and then it can be, a terrible liability for people to understand the truth. Things get told in minimum characters, and headlines are barely read, and it's exacerbated this don't think deep type of dynamic. And now we've got a yogurt company guy and major actors and activists, Michael Moore and Alec Baldwin, and and they're all catching this thing on, the Drudge Report, Chobani, and they don't understand even the mechanics of the finances in this situation. And by the way, how many other towns have the same balances because kids have credit and their parents can't control them? Can you bring some pragmatism to this conversation?
Pragmatism. I mean, what I think it's difficult is even outlets that we consider to be trustworthy, like NBC News really botched this because they kept talking about cold jelly sandwiches. And so, and the implication was that students would almost like have to wear the jelly sandwich like around their neck as like a scarlet letter. And I'm trying to put aside too, there is a debate to be had about how to handle lunch debt. I mean, I think that that's a fair conversation. But this was being painted as children going hungry, parents who could not afford to pay for their children's food. And in many cases, these are families who can afford to pay for their children's meals. But the way the system works now, because I'm in the system with 3 of my own kids, the kids have a lot of freedom. It acts almost like it's a credit card for adolescents. The email that your account's getting low can get lost in the craziness of life. So these, philanthropists who swooped in because their heart was breaking over hungry children, they just paid for a lot of middle class and upper middle class people's kids' ice cream sandwiches and French fries.
And this woman in the local restaurant who thinks she was doing the right thing too, accumulating some $4,000 worth of help for this cause, still doesn't understand what she, I think with good faith, erroneously started. This is crazy. What is the solution to this? It seems to me, look, I'm not somebody that likes to give away the taxpayers' money in any kind of haphazard way. But can we hone down the cuisine, simplify it, and make all of it free, and just know that it's an expense of the school systems, and just be done with this whole thing? Because what do we have, 70% of the student bodies in some communities on free lunch anyway?
I think statewide, 70% qualify for free or reduced lunch. Warwick, that number is 35%. Just in case people are curious to know what it is there.
Well, I've seen, the tens of millions of dollars projected for my idea. Only if you keep the whole,
Well,
what is it? A sun butter sandwich?
So sun butter is basically it's like peanut butter, but it's
without the allergy problem.
It's not, so you avoid the allergy problem. And it was the sandwich, and then it was the vegetable side, and the fruit side, and the milk.
Keep the burger and chips or whatever it is, the Salisbury steak. I don't know why that comes to me.
I don't know why you keep saying that.
I keep saying that because they used to have it in my high school. It was awful.
I don't think they have
it. It was like,
that
oh my
anymore.
God, it was a piece of rubber. You take it, you throw it in
The
the
ravioli
cafeteria.
was my favorite. When I was a teacher, teachers didn't used to be.
Is it that we look forward to lunch so much as kids that we have to have now this wide menu and it's got to be a shopper's choice? How about doing it like our mothers used to do? This is what you're having for dinner. If you don't like it, what was the word?
Too bad?
Starve.
Oh, starve.
Same thing. Both, right, Anita? Same thing.
I don't know. I mean,
simplify the expense. Simplify what's being offered. Make it part of the staple expense of the school system, and be done with it.
well, some of the reporting on this was interesting, also in the sense that some schools don't have those choices. I think I'm guessing now that it's the where most of the kids or all the kids are free reduced. They don't have these a la carte items. So you also have an issue of you've got, higher income kids have all these choices, low income kids have no choices.
Well, that's the same shaming, by the way.
And so some
not?
principal said to me, wait a second, like if we're actually talking about equity, like these kids are getting French fries, Rice Krispie treats, and like chocolate eclairs, and I'm getting dinged because I let my kids eat Sun Chips. Like what the heck? So I think that is a different conversation. Now you're up against big companies, Sodexo, Aramark, who obviously don't like your suggestion about reducing the choices.
Who's running the show here?
That's a different conversation. I don't love the idea of funding all people's lunches because I don't see a reason why this taxpayer should be paying for my kids to have lunch.
Yeah, the taxpayer is paying for 70% in some districts now. Let's get over it and just say that, nutrition is part of the educational experience. But
who's going to tell the Chobani guy that Providence owes $116,000 in lunch debt and Cranston owes $90,000?
Right.
I mean, are Alec Baldwin?
Well, some enterprising reporter ought to get on the road, go knock on the door and say, hey, by the way, you were duped, dummy.
And the ladies on the talk who all stood up and hands together, they're going to pay off the lunch. Because you know what, they do it, I actually wonder sometimes they do it more for themselves and how nice it makes them seem and how generous and how whatever. Because if they, who gives away $77,000 without finding out the details first?
People with a lot of money.
Yeah, it's true, I guess.
All right, we come back. Speaking of a lot of money, not in the towns anymore. Stay with us. I'm waiting. Yeah, so you've seen this headline a dozen times. Someday we'll stop. Someday, I don't know. We're going to have such financial difficulty down the line in communities who've lost their autonomy because of what the governor signed and the General Assembly passed. Here was the union's response, the teacher union. Oh, I'm sorry, here was the Journal's whack at the governor yesterday. I thought that headline was appropriate. It should include the General Assembly. And then you pointed out that the teacher unions went like that with a thank you. You can put that up too.
Oh yeah, they had
their
thank you note.
Right. Yeah.
They were following.
It's Erika's blog, by the way.
They were
Good
following
schoolhouse.
Emily Post's guidelines, I believe. Emily Post might have been the only happy person because that thank you note went up publicly from the NEA to Governor Raimondo, like that.
Like that. Yeah. Well, this is what it's all been about. As a former school committee member, remember Erika is a former teacher, school committee member, now writes this blog, which I think is essential reading. The unions don't like you, by the way, at all. And you've created a fairly non-diplomatic, let's put it this way, a non-diplomacy type of dynamic has resulted in your relationship with them via some of the stuff that you write and the like. You bothered by that? Would you rather have a little bit more cozy relationship to try to win a couple of arguments and
The
see
NEA?
some change? Yeah. No.
I've been a member of the NEA in 2 states. I know what they are, who they are. A superintendent I worked for years ago in my 20s used to say, I judge myself by my friends and my enemies. So I am not looking to
What's your
make friends with the
point of view
NEA.
as a former school committee member as to what this continuing contract evergreen bill does?
Well, I think that it creates an unfair negotiation, setting. I think that even if it's a tool that would be rarely, if maybe even never used, the idea that you would take that away from the people who, by the way, are the ones responsible for what's happening in the community. It's easy to say, we're going to take this away from you, but when your community is down to the ground, distressed, that's going to be your problem, and we're just going to watch. I just think that it's wrong.
Well, we've got all this ed reform conversation going on, and this is the big stuff. Are you happy with the ed reform package?
I like a lot about the ed reform package. I mean, particularly in the sense that it's finally something where those of us who have been wanting something to happen feel happy about that.
Empowering principals, site-based management, taking some of the appointments away from school committees, that kind of a thing. Anyway, the mission seems to be reform, and you're suggesting this evergreen thing spits in the face of that.
So I think it's a problem, and Dan McGowan tried to pin me down on this rightfully, and
Now
I
from
don't
the
feel
Boston
like
Globe,
and I don't think I have a great answer on this yet, a technical answer, because I would have to kind of reread everything. But my feeling is, part of the ed reform package was to create flexibility and to make it so that there's more nimbleness. And sort of like if a principal wants to try something that thinks is going to work, you always want to fail fast and be able to pivot quickly to do what you need to do. And to me, the evergreen contracts, the continuing contracts, those fly in the face of any sense of flexibility and nimbleness, because you've tied the hands of the people in charge.
Well, they say that's only now for wages and benefits, and that everything else is subject to.
Yeah, but wages and benefits aren't nothing.
It's 70% of the expense.
And health insurance costs are
$2.5 billion of unfunded liabilities in the state.
and also just the rate at which they increase per year. So it's frequent that it's a 7% increase, let's say, but there's years that it's a lot more than that, or there's years that you have all these claims come in. And by the way, if I thought that the union was willing to sort of negotiate in good faith, like for example, there have been districts who have said, listen, come to an informational session about this other healthcare plan that we think will be, just as good, but it might allow us to find some savings. Maybe it makes sense for the older people that are working in the school system. And they get bullied by the union not to even attend an informational session. So it's not like everyone's trying to get to yes. It's that even when you try to make changes, it's like this. And so to me now, you've just taken what's already an unfair fight and you've made it less fair.
Where do we go from here? The ed reform stuff, I think.
I'll tell you one thing.
Is a little bit of copy and paste of Massachusetts, which is something that should have been done a while ago. I still think there's a governance issue here. I think school committees and councils have got to sit at least in unison or bridged by mayors like they are in Massachusetts. We'll see. I still don't know whether we have the urgency. I keep talking about the urgency. Do you feel a bottom-up urgency amongst the constituents for ed reform? Because without that,
Nope.
I don't know what this is going to result in.
But I don't feel a bottom-up urgency around education
Period.
ever. So, you see it on these hot-button issues, which interestingly don't generally impact, people's lives every single day, like school does. But no, I don't see it.
It only impacts the parents who send their kids to school when they are sending them to school.
Not true.
In their minds.
Well, correct. Correct.
their minds.
But
the
I mean-
economies and the property
Correct.
tax values, school systems are inherently, prominently important in all of that.
True, but the safety of one's community, the economy of their community, is very much reliant on how educated or non-educated, graduates are. So you can pay for them on the front end, or you can pay for them on the back end. But I understand your point. In the day-to-day, you are correct. I will say this: there are a lot of people, ed reform supporters and philanthropists. They were big fans of the governor, and I would say not anymore.
When we come back, there is a dangling issue that Erika has been working on. I wonder if it'll see the light of day in the legislature. Stay with us. We've had previous discussions on this. You making any progress on your effort to get legislation to make it illegal and criminal for a teacher to have a sexual relationship with a student?
I'm optimistic that we'll get something through.
Because
You'll notice in the news yesterday we saw that a corrections officer was arrested for doing that because it's a crime in Rhode Island for a corrections officer
to
have sexual relationship with an inmate,
an adult inmate.
an adult inmate, as it should be. But again, our students still nothing for them. So I believe that the school safety conversation, which the governor is really hot on when it comes to gun laws, needs to be expanded beyond the issue of guns. To include educator sexual abuse. So I am hopeful that despite the NEA's opposition before and her, newfound friendship, love fest with the NEA, I'm hoping still that we will get something through because this is, talk about a no-brainer.
We need a broad concept, I guess, for the teacher unions to feel like they can participate in this, to not limit it to teachers. We've been through this argument before. I say uncle. Let's just get the definition of custodial relationship, but let's make sure that even the kids 17, 18, and maybe 19 who are still in their jurisdiction are protected as well.
I don't think we're going to get that. I don't think we're going to get anything for anybody over 18, but doesn't mean never.
So a high school senior who still has 4 months left in school can end up in a relationship with a teacher.
But I'll take better. Which what we have right now is no protections.
So you don't
at
want
all.
perfect to be the enemy of the good, is what you're telling me.
That is what I want, but every time I try and say that cliche, I mess it up. It's a little George W. Bushism of mine that I mess up that saying.
I don't want
perfect
to be the enemy of the good.
This coming from the guy who always messes up the saying about the now I'm going to mess it up, the fox guarding the hen house, but you always get it wrong. You talk about like the chickens guarding the fox. So on the radio he does that sometimes. I enjoy it.
Thank you for your point of view.
My pleasure.
Don't the chickens guard the hen? Next. So we will dig in next week to more conversations, most likely about some of the abortion challenges that we have here. We've had a couple of discussions on it already this week. If the legislature can't get their acts together to try to figure this whole thing out, it will be too bad. It really will be too bad. How hard is the left on language that they won't budge on? They're always, in the past, the left has said there's no compromise on the right. Well, the right and the middle are trying to compromise with the left. Right? Correct? We'll see you next week. And on the Radio 3 on Monday on WPRO. Good night.